Zodiac signs that shouldn't have pets. There are zodiac signs for whom getting a pet means disrupting the energy balance of their lives. Not because they are bad owners, but because their inner nature conflicts with the vibrations of the animal world. Such people can unconsciously transmit anxiety, fatigue or internal instability to their pets, and in return receive chaos in the house, illness or even karmic blows. Today, as a fortune teller and expert in esoteric currents, I will tell you about those signs that you should seriously think about before letting a cat, dog or any living creature into your space. This is not just a warning. This is knowledge that can protect from the destruction of subtle harmony and unnecessary suffering for both humans and animals. If you value the truth based on deep astrology and energy, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There is no banal advice here, only the power of knowledge and real discoveries about your nature. In the meantime, write in the comments whether you have a pet, and how much you are in harmony. Perhaps you will find an explanation for what previously defied logic. In this video we will name those to whom fate hints, an animal is not your path. The first sign is Leo. A Leo is not created to share attention. His nature requires a center, a stage, a space where he shines without interference. A pet can be at risk of being ignored if its presence does not correspond to the image that Leo wants to convey to his environment. For Leo, an admiring audience is important, and not a quiet furry friend who needs routine and consistency. He can get a pet impulsively, for the sake of an impression, style or trend. But after a while, the interest cools, and the animal remains in the background, receiving a minimum of attention and care. Leo is used to being the one who is served, and not the one who serves. Care that requires consistency, responsibility and obedience strains his internal structure. He cannot stand small responsibilities, especially if they are associated with limiting freedom and schedule. Leo can forget to feed on time, miss a walk because he was busy with something more grandiose. He will not patiently train a puppy or clean hair from furniture. He is irritated by everyday fuss, and this is the main risk for an animal that ends up in Leo's house. Even if Leo is truly attached to a pet, his need for recognition and external brilliance will compete with basic care. He can shift responsibility to other family members, delegate routine, without feeling that the animal's well-being depends on him. At the moment of emotional upsurge, he is able to have several pets at once, but later he will not be ready to bear the constant load. His energy is too active, impulsive, unstable for quiet creatures that need stability. Pets require not only love, but also rhythm. Leo is prone to spontaneity, holidays, mood swings. His home is a stage, not a cage for routine. He loves when everything around reflects his status, strength and freedom. An animal is a need for service, patience, silence, and therefore they do not match in rhythm and purpose. Even if he sincerely considers himself loving, his actions often run counter to the needs of the pet. The animal can become a decorative element, but not a full-fledged member of the family. For Leo, the house is the territory of his power, and not a platform for the unpredictable behavior of the animal. And if the pet shows character, violates the order or attracts too much attention, Leo can quickly lose patience. His egocentrism prevents him from establishing real contact, based not on admiration, but on responsibility. And even if he chooses an animal that emphasizes his image, a dog of an elite breed or an exotic cat, the internal resource for daily care is often not enough. The second sign is Aries. Aries acts quickly, abruptly and not always thoughtfully. His impulsiveness can lead to the fact that the decision to get a pet is made spontaneously, under the influence of emotions or a momentary mood. He is able to see a puppy, feel sorry for it and an hour later find himself with a carrier and bowls. But after a few days, he realizes, constant care, early risers, hair on his clothes and the need to limit himself are not his format. He gets irritated by the routine. It is difficult for him to maintain discipline, and this is exactly what the pet requires. Aries has problems with patience. He wants everything at once. And the animal, especially a young one, does not obey right away. It does not listen, requires time, attention and repetition. Aries loses his temper if he does not get a result. He can raise his voice, leave the room, leave the animal to its own devices. His irascibility and inability to concentrate for a long time make him an unpredictable owner. He forgets about feeding, walking, changing water, because his mind is occupied with something completely different. At the center of his world are goals, movement, struggle, and not peace, affection and care. Another reason is the tendency to change interests. Today he adores his pet, tomorrow he has important meetings, trips, training. The animal remains. It requires constant attention, especially if it is a dog or an animal with a high level of activity. It is difficult for Aries to be around 24/7. He cannot stand restrictions, and a pet limits freedom. You will not leave, you will not stay, you will not forget. Constant affairs, movement, spontaneous plans, all this makes care offensively secondary. Even if Aries tries, his style of behavior can be too rude for a sensitive animal. He acts harshly, quickly, without pauses. Not every creature can stand such a pace, and he does not know how to slow down for the comfort of another, neither in people nor in pets. And if there are difficulties between him and the animal, he is not inclined to sort things out. He distances himself or shifts the care to others. His fire is directed forward, but not deep, and care is precisely depth. The pet may end up in an unsafe environment where there is no predictability, gentleness, constancy. Aries is not cruel, but is not adapted to a daily routine and consistent care. His good intentions are drowned in the chaos of everyday life, in which the animal lacks stability. Aries needs movement, and the animal needs stability. Their internal rhythms do not coincide. The third sign is Aquarius. Aquarius perceives pets not as living beings, but as part of a common system, which he is not always ready to emotionally engage in. He can adore the idea of reading articles about breeds, choosing interesting food, developing a care system. But when the reality comes, in which the animal requires daily affection, constant physical care and predictability, Aquarius loses interest. He lives by his mind, and the pet needs contact, attention and physical closeness. Aquarius has a difficult relationship with routine. His inner chaos, desire for freedom, rejection of boundaries, all this conflicts with life next to an animal. He can be charmed in the first weeks, but then delays begin, forgotten bowls, cancelled walks, irritation from noise or smells. He cannot stand restrictions, and an animal is an obligation. It is difficult for him to integrate into his unstable regime a creature that needs a regime. Aquarius is a sign of experiments, unpredictability, interest in the new. And an animal is repetition, simple actions, care without gratitude. He can immerse himself in projects, disappear from home, forget about everyday details. And even if he considers himself loving, in fact the animal is often left alone with itself. He may think that the pet should understand his way of life. But the animal does not understand. It needs. Aquarius is also prone to idealization. He can imagine that the pet will behave calmly, not demand attention, will be convenient. But when faced with reality, an active character, health problems, fur, noise, he loses interest. He is not ready to sacrifice his habits for the sake of other people's needs, especially if these needs are simple, but intrusive. His mind strives for the sky, and the animal is drawn to the earth. Even with a good attitude, the emotional distance of Aquarius makes him a cold owner. He can provide food, a veterinarian, gadgets, but he will not be able to give warmth, contact, predictability. And this is exactly what the animal needs. His abstract approach turns into a practical instability that makes living together impossible or risky. The fourth sign is Cancer. Cancer's problem is not the lack of love for animals. On the contrary, he is capable of deep affection. But it is this excessive emotional involvement that becomes the reason why Cancer is not recommended to have pets. He transfers all his unresolved experiences, anxieties, fears and illusions to the animal. Instead of healthy interaction, a symbiosis is formed in which the pet becomes a mirror of the owner's mental instability. Cancer is prone to overprotection. He does not just care, but controls every move of his pet, worrying about it as if everything in the world depended on it. He is afraid for its health, diet, behavior. Any little thing can cause a panic attack in Cancer. He does not rest. He lives in constant anxiety. The pet ceases to be a source of joy and turns into another reason for worry. In addition, Cancers are often emotionally unstable. The mood can change dramatically, and the pet feels it. Sometimes affection and tenderness, sometimes complete disregard, if Cancer is immersed in its own pain. The animal does not understand these changes. It cannot adapt to unpredictable emotional waves. As a result, tension is formed. The pet does not feel peace, cannot relax in this space filled with anxiety and drama. It is difficult for Cancer to let go. And this means that if the pet gets sick or gets old, Cancer will plunge into a severe emotional crisis. His psyche is not ready for loss, especially if it is related to someone who has become part of his inner world. He does not experience the departure of the animal, he collapses from it. And in this process, he will not be able to be useful to himself or others. This is destructive not only for Cancer, but also for his entire environment. There is another factor. Cancer tends to project the image of an ideal creature onto the pet. He expects gratitude, affection, a response. But animals are not actors according to a script. And when expectations do not match reality, Cancer begins to feel deceived. He suffers, feels guilty, irritated. All this makes life together with a pet not harmonious, but nervous. The animal feels instability and cannot fully open up. Cancer may also have problems with boundaries. He invades personal space, not understanding that even an animal has its own needs for peace, quiet, privacy. He does not let you breathe. His love is stifling. He constantly interferes, touches, calls, worries. As a result, the pet becomes anxious, fearful or aggressive. What should have been joy turns into an endless source of anxiety and conflict. Cancer is better off directing his energy to healing himself, stabilizing his emotions, building healthy relationships with people. Pets are not therapy or a substitute. They are living beings that need clear, calm, stable energy. And until Cancer learns to be in balance, he will not be able to create a favorable atmosphere for life next to him. Love is not pain and not control. And Cancer needs to realize this before he lets into the house a creature that depends on him completely. The fifth sign is Gemini. For Gemini, the issue of pets is not about feelings, but about attention. They are not evil, not indifferent, not heartless. But their attention is scattered, unstable, chaotic. They get carried away, forget, switch. And in this instability, the pet suffers the most, because it cannot adjust to the rhythm, which changes every day without warning. Gemini can suddenly decide that they need a cat, a dog or a parrot, impulsively, emotionally, inspired. But after a week they lose interest, not because the animal did not live up to expectations, but because Gemini's focus changed. A new idea, project, acquaintance appeared, and the animal remained, with its needs, regime, character. Gemini is not ready to adjust its freedom-loving rhythm to the clear needs of another creature. They cannot stand routine, and caring for a pet is, first of all, constancy. Strict feeding, walks, veterinary examinations, emotional involvement. All this requires consistency, and Geminis have an internal protest against consistency. They lose patience, start ignoring their responsibilities, and shift them onto others. The pet ends up in limbo. Formally, there is an owner, but in fact, there is none. In addition, Geminis love freedom. It is hard for them to realize that now there is someone who will not let them leave, disappear, or stay for a day without explanation. They feel attachment as a limitation. This is not about cruelty, it is about psychological intolerance of obligations. And sooner or later, the moment comes when the animal turns into a burden. Geminis do not want to admit it, but subconsciously begin to avoid contact, reduce interaction, and become detached. Geminis are also prone to sudden mood swings. Today they play with their pet, tomorrow they are irritated by its barking or behavior. The animal does not understand why it was pushed away, if yesterday it was affectionate. It loses its support, becomes nervous, behaves badly. And Gemini, in turn, is not able to stabilize the situation. They do not have the resources to manage the emotional climate in the house. It is also worth considering that Gemini does not tolerate restrictions in space. They love changes, trips, sudden exits from the house. The pet ties them to a place. And this causes irritation, even if it is not realized. A conflict arises. On the one hand, the desire to care, on the other, the need for freedom. And in this struggle, the one who is dependent and cannot talk about his pain suffers. The best thing that Gemini can do is to honestly admit to themselves that the animal requires more than just sympathy. This is responsibility, consistency, involvement. And until Gemini has internal maturity for this, the pet will not bring joy, neither to them, nor to itself. It is better to direct your energy to something that does not depend on regular care and a stable schedule. An animal is not a toy, not a decoration, not a moment of inspiration. It is a living being that feels, and Gemini is not ready for such feelings yet.